Name is Alexis, and this is my response to the Lesson 3 Video Reflection and Analysis assignment. So the first prompt asks what it believes my top 3 perceptual distortions that employees could have when meeting a new manager could be. And the first one that I believe in, and in my opinion, the most important one would be stereotypes. So let's say, for example, not to be misogynistic or feminist or anything, but let's say that the first time you see your new manager, it's let's say it's a man, it's an old man, and you would just based off first impressions, you might think, hey, he might be grumpy, he might be mad, he might be very strict about his job, he might push us to overwork, s- simple stereotypes like that. Often these are often negative, obviously, but and often they can also be wrong. So even though I don't really recommend following or falling victim to stereotypes, it is something that's inevitable. It's bound to happen eventually. And speaking of first impressions, the next um, perceptual distortion would be primacy effect. So basically, what you think based on first impressions. The most important part of a meeting of meeting someone. It's the first impression. What impression he leaves you when you first meet him. That's really the most important one because that's the one that stays with you throughout your entire. As long as you continue meeting that person, that first impression is going to be the one that really is highlighted the most. So it's important to keep a good first impression and maintain a good profile throughout your career. So if they're meeting a new manager and he gives off a great first impression, like he's friendly, he knows what he's going to do, he seems like he likes his job, that's usually a good sign because it means that the employees will probably do a good job and follow along with what the manager might be inquiring. Impressions can also be bad. People might not enjoy meeting new people. The managers might not enjoy their job so much. These first impressions can be they can really let down the employees as well. So it's just really important to keep a good first impression. It's a very important part of meeting a new person. And the last point that I'm or the last perceptual distortion that I wanted to mention was the recency effect. So like the latest information that you received about a person, or the most recent information, I should say. That information is usually the one that sticks with the employees the most. It's scientific. It's simply scientifically proven that the latest information received is the easiest one to keep with you at all times, so to speak. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind that the most recent interactions are the ones that are going to be remembered for the short term. But still, that's to me that's the out of my top three, that's the least important one, but it's still a very important point to keep in mind that the most recent actions are the ones that stick along, at the very least in the short term. Okay. So the second prompt of the assignment asks what I could do to avoid myself from falling prey to fundamental attribution error. And there are a couple of things that could be done. The first one that I would personally do, especially for when I'm like, for example, judging someone else, a coworker, perfect example, would be to try and picture myself in their shoes before I make any type of judgment. Like the book, for example, the book gives a very good example about a coworker that's always late. I I'm gonna take that example for a moment. I like to think of before I judge that person. First of all, it's very important to just ask if you feel curious, and it's okay if the person doesn't want to share their private life. That's completely acceptable, but it's not okay to make erroneous judgment just based on a belief. So what I like to do is like picture myself in their shoes. So what could they be doing? What could be going on? Maybe they have to do some do something a few minutes before they go to work, and that's why they're always late. That's good. That could be a good reason, but always keep it as like a theory, not as a true statement. So that's what I personally like to do when when I'm judging other people, for example. Now, when I'm trying to uh, I'm gonna mention the self-serving bias, the most direct way I could put it. The best way I can see to avoid that would be to try it whenever I make a mistake, especially. Try to analyze that mistake. See or look for what I did wrong and what I could improve. Try and blame myself for what is my fault. Don't try to look for excuses and other external factors that could probably not really be at fault for what just happened for any wrong thing that I just did. So yeah, try to look instead of looking for external factors, I try to look for internal factors, try to analyze the internal factors, and that way I can improve myself and see what I did wrong and work based off that. Same, it's it also works the other way around when I'm trying to when we're judging another person, for example, the same way the book implies. Whenever someone else makes mistakes, we don't even think about external factors in their cases. We directly think that there might be something going on with them internally. It's the exact opposite when we do it because we're biased towards ourselves. So I think the best thing that we could do is try to limit how biased we are. That's really the best thing, the best that we could do to start. Try not to be biased and try to put blame on ourselves and try to use that blame and use those mistakes to improve on our actions so we don't make that mistake again. That's really the best way I can avoid being sorry about that. That's really the best way I can avoid being prey to fundamental attribution error. Okay. So the third prompt for this assignment asks for it to list at least three positive reinforcements that are used in the workplace that could be useful or that I believe are or my top three best positive reinforcement methods, basically. So the first one I want to talk about is continuous reinforcement. Even though I do believe that mistakes should be addressed with the purpose of improving and changing or fixing that mistake, I do believe that continuous reinforcement is useful in helping someone stay on track, do the correct assignment, and really I believe that every time someone does someone right, they should be addressed and rewarded for it because that's what they're meant to be doing. And if they do the job correctly, they should be rewarded. They should be compensated, or they should be reinforced. They should they should be positively reinforced. So yes, continuous reinforcement is probably one of the positive reinforcements that I personally agree with. Another one is fixed ratio schedule, which uh it's basically what I stated, but it's compensation for a um okay, fixed ratio schedule would be compensation for a after it's rewarding after a period of time. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. It's exactly what I've been standing for. That's exactly what I meant by with continuous work. But this one is after a period of time, which I completely agree with. I know that a company can't exactly praise you for every single thing that you do right, but I do know that if they have like a fixed amount of sales that they want to do, or not really a fixed amount of sales, but after a while they check your report, they check how much process you've made, and they let you know that you've been doing a great job. You've been doing what the company wanted you to do, and probably even better. If you've done an even better job, that's perfect. That's you've exceeded expectations. That's exactly what should happen after positive reinforcement. That's exactly what I believe should happen after you do something right continuously. And even when you don't do it continuously, you should still celebrate for a correct action and a continuing to do an action correctly or an assignment correctly or just doing your job the way you're supposed to be doing it should be compensated or should be praised. Now sorry about that. Another thing which is very similar would be a variable ratio schedule, which would be it's very similar, but it's after a instead of after a set period of time, it would be after a set period, a set number of uh traceable actions. So correct actions, a set number of um after a set amount of correct as actions completed, assignments, jobs done correctly. Basically, it's the same concept as I've stated before, but instead of after a period of time, it should be after a set amount of perfect, well executed jobs. So, like for example, the book gives a perfect example. It's in a call center. The higher the number of calls the workers make, the higher the chances of closing a sale. I believe that every single successful call should be praised. Every single chance for a potential buyer should be praised because even if you don't make the sale, let's say that person didn't buy the sale, they found a better deal. Let's give that example. Maybe that person could recommend you or your or the company you work for to someone else, and that someone else does make a sale. That's perfect. That's a job well done, and it was accomplished thanks to the positive actions to, thanks to doing your job correctly. Something that only could happen if you were praised for the job you did. Now, for the fourth and final prompt of this assignment, the the prompt asks, um, it gives us a it gives us a situation where there's a group of managers that are they are obviously abusing power, and they are doing a really bad job at being well managers. And the question asks that based on Bandura's social cognitive theory, what sort of company culture is likely to spring from these practices? So basically, this company might not make it too far because due to the lack of care or the lack of enthusiasm that the managers are obviously reporting or demonstrating, the employees will lose their self confidence or self efficacy, as the book mentions, and due to this loss of self encouragement, they will more than likely, almost guarantee, do a poor job at their assigned locations, which would lead to a poor outcome in the company, probably lose profits. Eventually, the managers are either going to have to change their strategy to a point where they stop doing things like playing favorites, they stop writing direct reports in front of others, they stop encouraging to make. This is one thing that I really do not like, encouraging coworkers to report one another for making small mistakes. I agree that that mistakes may lead to failure in the company, but reporting them, especially small mistakes, that's not something I completely agree with. It's okay to do it if it's very continuous, and I can see how it would happen if it's very continuous, but for a few small mistakes, it shouldn't be a report. This could lead to really bad. First of all, obviously, I've already mentioned that it's gonna lower the efficacy drastically, which will lead to poor performance in their jobs. But not only will these poor management skills lead to employees losing their jobs, probably the company being short-staffed, but in the long run, it's inevitable. It's gonna go bankrupt. The lack of confidence from the employees will lead to them either doing a poor job or being way too stressed and overworked that they're eventually gonna give out and they're not gonna be able to do a correct job. So yeah, a new employee would really just have to seek higher ups and try to make changes to this to that management style. Because other than that, there's really no if these um annotated behaviors continue on from these managers, it's inevitable that the company's gonna fail. And the book mentions it too. Like and I completely agree with what the book says. Managers, especially if they lead like a big team of the company in the company, they should be self-encouraging. They should be encourage their co-workers to do their job efficiently. They should praise the workers for doing their job efficiently. If they don't do so, then they're doing poor management skills. Their employees are probably going to do a horrible job in the long run, and the company's going to end up losing profit and probably losing employees and eventually going bankrupt. It's inevitable if that continuous behavior continues. Poor choice of words there. All right, that's everything from for my presentation. Thank you.